Good morning. You're listening to Central Wisconsin's 24-hour information station, AM 1320 WFHR. It's time now for the Morning Magazine, brought to you by Comfort Air Heating, Cooling, Plumbing. Now, with the Morning Magazine, here's Carl Hilke.
Thank you, Jerry, and welcome everybody to today's show on AM 1320 as well as on the web at WFHR.com. We also welcome our friends from, let's see, I keep forgetting the name. Is it River Cities Media or RCCA? RCCA. Okay, there we got it. RCCA, who was here to digitally record our, video record in high definition our conversation today, because Wood County Board Chairman Lance Pliml is here, and we thank the folks from RCCA who are recording this, which means you can watch this on their website, rcca.org, and in high definition, on the Solaris cable system, but in standard def on Charter. With that, we welcome the chairman of the Wood County Board, Lance Pliml, for his monthly report. Good morning, sir.
Thanks for having me here this morning. Appreciate it, Carl.
Okay, let's get that microphone just a little bit closer to you. Okay, well, we have some interesting things to talk about, but let's talk about something that's being debated in Madison right now. And State Representative Scott Krug was among, I think, 33 Republican lawmakers that signed a letter saying, when it kind of protesting what's being talked about in Madison regarding transportation. And that is, hey, listen, don't have us paying for the zoo interchange and forget about everybody else. We want a fair distribution of the transportation money. I know you've talked with Representative Krug and other members of our area's legislative delegation. What message have you been giving them?
Well, on the radio, you can't see it. If you're watching this on RCCA, you'll see I'm kind of smiling, because this has been the never-ending dilemma in the state. You know, by virtue of population, the southeast corner of the state has a majority of the population, and therefore a majority of the legislators, and therefore a majority of the votes, and money tends to migrate down that direction and never come back our way. And that's some of the reason that we have done some of the road bonding that we've had to do in our area, to keep our roads up to par. It's a battle. It's going to be tough to stop construction, for instance, of the zoo interchange once it's started, because it's an absolute mess down there. But the reality of it is, taxpayers from around the state send that money to Madison, and it needs to be equally distributed around the state. So I certainly commend those legislators who signed on to that letter and have encouraged leadership to evenly distribute that money around the state for those projects. I often say it's one of those, if you build it, they will come. And, I think we would have more business development, more opportunities if more of those dollars were expended in our area. So I'm hoping that happens. I understand the fact that you cannot continue to bond $1.3 billion a year and have a budget that works. Pretty soon the interest alone will chew up all of the dollars that you're borrowing. But, at the end of the day, those dollars need to be spread across the state for those projects that are most needed to be done, and cannot end up just, you look right now, and a little bit of regression here, but you've got those projects.
Right.
You've got the Bucks Arena project. You got all of those are tax dollars, and there's only so many dollars out there. And it really is important that those get evenly distributed throughout the state.
Well, the Bucks one is an interesting one, because we taxpayers already own the Bradley Center. I mean, that's when they built the Bradley Center, they made the state
responsible for the maintenance. And, it's really interesting. Typically, you'll hear people in the legislature say, well, the people out there, the constituent, may not know all the facts. And in this case, it might be true. One of the problems there is we are on the hook for maintenance of that. And if you look at the long-term liability, you might be better off building a new stadium. I'm not proposing that, because I haven't looked at that, but that is true.
That's the model that's being sold. Yeah. It's cheaper to keep them.
And it may be, and it's not one of the issues that I deal with on a local level, but those are the kind of issues we deal with locally, where there's a trade-off usually. It's not usually one side or the other. But
I'll give you another example of what we were talking about, and it has to do with Weedick. When all the stories coming out about the problems with Weedick. Well, one of the things that came out showing where the money has been going to the areas that if we wanted to spend money to help grow the economies of areas that are hurting, it's been doing a very poor job because, again, it's going to the major metropolitan areas, Madison, Milwaukee.
And I think there's something like, was there 1,100 loans or something? I mean, there was a lot of activity.
But everybody, we're going, and Representative Krug, when I had him here, we're going, hey, we have issues here for economic development that we need to have addressed.
You're right. We have facilities, for instance, the Port Mill down there, the DMI development. Tremendous amount of capacity. You have rail, you have power. It's a scenic area with the river. We have tremendous opportunities for development, but we've gotten nowhere with the additional bridge across the river that would connect Rapids to Port down there. So, we constantly deal with those, and it would be a drop in the bucket to allocate some of those funds that keep ending up in the southeast part of the state into our area. And that's my concern always. You collect $1 billion or $500 million and it all gets spent there when 10 or 15 million might make our area extremely more viable, and also eliminate some of those congestion issues they have in some of those areas that in effect are overpopulated or have overgrown.
Speaking of highway construction, you want to give us an update on the road projects in Wood County?
Sure. As you saw last year and this year, there's a proposal this year, although it hasn't happened yet, to bond an additional about $5 million a year to bring our infrastructure back up into the shape that it really needs to be. And that's another issue of pay me now or pay me later.
Right.
Once the roads deteriorate and they're gone and the substructure totally deteriorates, it costs a lot more than it does to do those upgrades. County N was one of the big projects that was just finished with, in effect, last year's money. DD has also been completed, and right now if you're in Southwood County and you happen to be traveling along Highway 73 and you look to the south on County Z, that's the next big project. So County Z from Highway 73 down to the county line is under construction. That's a major project, and that traffic will be detoured for a while.
Okay. Well, they say there's two types of seasons in Wisconsin, winter and road construction.
And that's what there is, and in road construction season in summer tend to be very short lately. So.
Yeah. If you're just joining us on the Morning Magazine, welcome. We're getting our monthly report from Wood County Board Chairman Lance Pliml, and we also welcome our friends from RCCA Media. If you want to see what we look like, you can just go to rcca.org or go to your local public access channel on your cable system. And I know Solaris has it in HD Charter. Not yet.
And Carl, if I could just touch on, this has nothing to do with road construction, but certainly want to, offer my condolences to any of those families who have lost a loved one recently. But, we've seen a pretty significant spike in accidents and fatalities in our area.
I noticed.
And it's summer season, and obviously you have, the recent fawning, a lot more deer and fawns out there.
That's right.
To be careful of speed, alcohol. People are up later and out.
Not wearing seatbelts.
Right. And I urge you to be extremely cautious out there, to be careful. This is the time of year where we tend to see those spikes in accidents. And no matter what we do from a road construction project to try to make roads safer, there's a personal responsibility out there too, and I ask you to be careful, keep your eyes open, and because that too stretches resources with our emergency personnel and everybody else that responds in those particular instances. And it can be those or simply the tanker that left the road and tipped over the other day on County A. Those are tremendous amount of resources get expended every time that something like that occurs.
Yeah, so be careful out there. And your point about the fawn season, there was just a release this week from the DOT telling folks, be careful. This is the second highest time of the year where we have high amounts of deer vehicle crashes.
Absolutely. I had to wait for, two little fawns were actually playing in the road in front of me the other day. I had to come to a complete stop, and they couldn't decide which way to go for quite some time. And, if you're out there, whether it's in your car especially, we tend to see these the deer motorcycle collisions these time of year, which typically don't have a great outcome. So, be careful, be aware, and then don't mix that with any of those activities that would otherwise probably enhance your chances of having a bigger problem.
If you're going to be celebrating, and we're getting close to the 4th of July holiday, as I say, a week from today starts North America's Freedom Festival, because July 1st is Canada Day, and it leads right into our 4th of July. And from July 1st on, I think a lot of people will be on vacation.
Well, they are, and it is a time to get out. And we have, there's all the local town celebrations.
Yep.
There's graduation parties. It's increased wedding activity.
Oh, yes.
Obviously, the 4th of July, we just went through Memorial Day, but there is something going on pretty much. We just had Cranberry Fest here. There's something going on every single weekend, and there's opportunities to get out there. And I just urge the public to not only be responsible in your own behavior, but if you see somebody out there who might not be responsible, it's a lot easier to stop that ahead of time rather than deal with the consequences later.
Yes, take the keys away, say, we'll get you home.
Absolutely.
Okay. Speaking, since we are mentioning, now it's the time here, it's a good season, good start to the tourism season for our campgrounds.
Looking good. Again, kind of funny. The campgrounds in and of themselves have been operating at capacity or near capacity every single weekend. We do have availability during the week to get some of those sites. The problem we've had is cooperation from the weather. Now, that doesn't impact necessarily our parks budgets, because they're there, they've paid for those sites, they've reserved them. But it certainly affects spending within the communities. If you get to a campsite Friday night and it's pretty nice, and then all of a sudden it starts raining Saturday afternoon, oftentimes by late Saturday afternoon, evening, or Sunday morning for sure, a lot of those people have packed up and headed home when they look at those weather forecasts. So we need a little cooperation from up above. We need some good weather that encompasses the entire weekend season, and then especially when we get into this week leading into the 4th of July, then down in the Wisconsin Rapids area with the State Water Ski Show Tournament. Right through July, we are booked pretty solid. Okay.
Well, it's great to have the visitors here. Water is one of the things everyone's concerned about, and there was a resolution on the last county board meeting to direct the Corporation Council to work with other county staff and a committee member to develop a draft groundwater protection ordinance for Wood County for presentation next month. And there were even some questions about the legality of such an ordinance. What can you give us as an update?
That was an interesting resolution. It did come before the board, and it did pass. And I can say this, there wasn't a single board member who was against protecting the groundwater. The issue was, does the county have the authority to supersede what the state has as a regulatory definition? And can you do that? And if you can do it, how would you do it? Because one of the things that happens is when we exceed our authority, typically the state eliminates the ability for us to have any local control. That was my concern. But it did pass. Meetings started this past Monday. We had a meeting, Corp Council, the Health Department, and one of the members of the committee, I think Bill Lightnum is the one representing the committee there, to work on that. There are several state statutes which govern this particular area. I don't know that we're going to get any traction, but it's worth a try. So they're out there looking to see if they can craft anything that might work in tandem with the state regulation or allow us to be a little more proactive.
Right.
The current legislation allows you to cite and to do some things after the contamination has occurred. The question is, in most cases and with most issues, it's probably better to address an issue prior to than after. So they're looking at those opportunities. Our corporation counsel and some of the other people who advise us said you really can't go that direction, but we're looking at those opportunities. We're going to see what happens. I'm hoping they can come back with something in a timely manner, but my bigger concern is if they're going to address the issue, that they come back with something that really works and not hurry to craft something that would later get shot down or end up in court, and then there would be a precedent-setting case that would disallow any local control. So my hope is that, well, I guess my first hope would be that, they could get it done that quick. If they can't, though, and come up with something good, take your time, get it right, study the issue, and then bring it forth before the board.
Of course, this part of the reason for this is the proposed CAFO and concern about other types of pollution in the area. And everybody's concerned, especially in rural areas, about the quality of their groundwater. As we know, groundwater moves. It doesn't.
Yeah, and that's the specific issue, and that's been one of my concerns. There are strict regulations that deal with CAFOs.
Right.
And if we aim this ordinance at CAFOs, I'll be frank, and nobody's going to like to hear it probably, but if that's what's done, you're going to lose. This has to be a comprehensive groundwater protection ordinance that would deal with all issues. This is where we lose local control. It happened. I happened to chair the frac sand task force for the Council Association for the state, and anytime a county or municipality issued a moratorium based on nothing other than we don't like it, the state stepped in and said, we're taking away your right to do it because you didn't look at the issue from the perspective we would look at it. Right. That is my concern with the groundwater protection one. Everybody wants to protect groundwater. It has to be done in a fashion that you're actually looking to protect groundwater and not eliminate the chance of a business, in effect, opening. So that doesn't mean you're pro, anti, or anything else. It just means there's a reality to everything. Unlike a string, when you pull on one end, the other end doesn't just come along. It's more, in effect, as if you were pulling on a spider web.
Right.
And you pull one end of it, and a whole bunch of other things come into play.
Well, there was another, speaking of water quality issues, there was another from Conservation, Education, etc. Support the efforts of Pavelski Development, Nemco Lake Development, and Nemco Lake Owners Association in the dredging and maintenance of Nemco Lake and 4 Mile Creek, south of County Z, for the improvement of recreation, navigability, access, and overall water quality. You know, there's been, ever since that development on Nemco Lake started, there's people that are happy to see it. And there's old timers or some other folks going, oh, this is ruining the lake. This is, we've
seen both sides of it. I've been there since the start. And,
okay. So what does this wrestle? What are we talking about? Well,
the lake was originally. The dam was originally built. The lake was there to provide quality water for the mill. It was also built as a recreation area or enhanced as a recreation area for employees of the paper company way back when. A lot of you remember the park there.
Yes, I do.
Over time, that lake is silted in greatly. The weeds have grown to the point where much of the lake was unusable. So there's an area south of County Z, which would be in the area of the Ridges Golf Course, down to the lake. Now, first question was, where does the creek end? Where does the 4 Mile Creek end and the lake actually start? So I don't know that it's real easy to draw that line. I'm sure there's some strict definition, but that is silted in over time. And to create more recreational, friendly usability of that lake, which was one of the intents originally, the Pavelskis have offered to dredge part of that to increase navigability. It'll probably also increase the water quality or improve the water quality. It does start to affect areas eventually down along our park shoreline and the boat launch over there if it silts in far enough at some point. So when we have the opportunity for a private developer to come in to improve the quality of the lake, we would always like to take advantage of that. From a county's perspective, from a town, village perspective, we have no regulatory authority on that. That's a DNR-issued permit. What we were asked to do was to support it in effect, so when they go to the DNR, they can say, we have support of the local surrounding municipalities and county government in our efforts to do this. And this would have no impact on the park other than some maybe increased navigability of the water over there, maybe some improved water quality, and then long-term navigability of that lake. And anytime we can increase that surface area, because if you get out to Lake Wazicha in the summer, it's crowded. And if you get up to the river in Buren and try to get to the boat launch, because we have not had the opportunity.
Right.
Those, we had an improvement out there that was going to provide for parking of, I believe, 80 cars and trailers up along Buren. That has not happened yet. So if you get up there and try to launch a boat right off the county highway, that's pretty tough. So when we can enhance some of those opportunities at some of the other facilities we have, provide quality recreation, it increases tourism. It makes our area more attractive. And when those people come up here, it tends to increase economic development. It takes only one person coming up from the southern part of the state or from northern Illinois that enjoys our area, that might own a small business down there that says housing's affordable, schools are excellent, transportation is good. We have tremendous capability in our communications infrastructure. Why don't we move our business or division up here? It takes one person to do that. So every time we have those opportunities, we like to take advantage of.
That's why I say we all are ambassadors for this area.
This particular project cost from a dollar standpoint nothing. to the village, Port Edwards, town of Grand Rapids, although it doesn't touch the town of Grand Rapids, but or the county, and the opportunity to enhance that. The development of the lake, that property was bought by a private developer from the paper company. Whether they developed it or whether they would have left it, I don't think that would have changed. The access has been the bigger issue on one side of the lake. And for those of people who don't know it, you can access that by boat under the highway with all but pretty much the biggest boats. And I will give you an example. I had a 19-foot boat, a ski boat with about 350 horsepower. You can take that under those tubes without any problem at all. You couldn't take a wakeboard tower underneath it. Some of the bigger pontoon boats, obviously, if you have a canopy, are not going to fit. But for the most part, you can get onto all parts of the lake with a boat. Okay.
Well, your point about Lake Wazeecha is well taken, and because it would be nice if our neighboring county of Portage County would do something to clean up the weeds on the other side of the bridge. That would help greatly.
That's been a problem, Carl. If we could get settling ponds in, if we could stop some of the silting in at Wazeecha, which then eventually ends up down at Nemco and further down, all of that helps. And then again, it's finite number of dollars. And this is where I say it's always a trade-off. Everything's a compromise. Sometimes if we spend a little bit of money up front, we can save ourselves doing another $2 million dredging project, for instance, at Lake Wazeecha that we did about, it's probably been 15 or 20 years ago now. Again, sometimes it's pay me a little now or pay me later, and why not enjoy it the entire time than wait till it reaches the point where it's unusable?
Well, speaking of tourism, here in Wisconsin Rapids, we're famous for our 4th of July celebration, specifically the gigantic pyro musical, and then the Rafters have added to that reputation with their big fireworks show scheduled at the stadium on Thursday. So that brings in a lot of people who come to Wisconsin Rapids to bring their families for a little night of fun and probably spend some time in our restaurants or gas up and the like. It's a big deal, and I think people need to realize that.
Carl pointed it out earlier. Every single person in this area is an ambassador for our area, and that is certainly an opportunity to really showcase what we have here. One of the things that I find frustrating, and some of those who know me out there, I grew up in the Chicago suburbs. I had opportunity to go into the city there. Lived in Madison for a number of years. Obviously, a lot of opportunities there. But when I hear people up here tell me there's nothing to do.
Oh, you and me both.
I mean, I just absolutely, I find it mind-boggling. It makes me laugh because in my position, I get invited to a lot of events.
Same
and they're
here.
occurring every night. And I know Carl does because I hear him sometimes broadcasting from those events. Right. Or just taking the microphone at a Rafters game. I can tell you this. I can't get to 1/10 of the events I'm invited to, and they occur every single night of the week. There's something to do. So when I hear people complain there's nothing to do here, you haven't opened the door and looked outside because, like I said, I cannot even attend close to all the events that occur on a regular basis.
And so many of them are family-friendly events designed to get families together and everybody have a good time. And the Red Sands Beach area is going to be showcased this Saturday with YMCA's 21st annual triathlon, and I'm going to be announcing that. So, and there'll be a lot of people coming from town for that.
Takes advantage of our parks, takes advantage of the area. There's a reason that the state cross country meets, the state girls gymnastics championships, the state water ski show tournament. Right. I could go on and on and on occur in our area, and that's because we have the facilities to house those, to take care of them, and we have the volunteers out there. I can't, maybe just take 1 second to thank the hundreds of volunteers that we have out there that make these events work year in, year out. I tend to see the same faces at a lot of them, but I'll tell you, it takes hundreds, if not thousands, of people to pull those events off, and the people in our communities tend to jump in and volunteer.
Well, Pam and I are going to be at the Red Sands Beach area this Saturday and welcoming our triathletes. They're a better athlete than me as I try to get rid of the allergies and the colds that have been popping up this
that time of year.
Yeah, I know it is. Well, as always, I appreciate your time, sir, with the update. And you and everybody in Wood County have a happy and safe 4th of July holiday.
Thank you very much, Carl.
Okay, and that's Wood County Board Chairman Lance Pliml wrapping up part 1 of today's edition of The Morning Magazine. The Morning Magazine, as always, is brought to you by Comfort Air.